Really happy to welcome you all to this webinar on intentional living. And I wanted to introduce you also to Arpita and Srinidhi, who are co-founders of the Curio-city Collective. We're a young NGO, and we're working on well-being in Indian cities and looking to build a space in which we actually hope to offer people the ability to construct their own very unique journeys towards transformative change and to look at what that means. And to do this, we're looking to extend access to a learning ecosystem of podcasts, events, resources, and courses. Now, coming to the theme of intentional living and why we've chosen to focus on this. One thing the pandemic has done is that it's made us see how closely we're all connected as a species and just how close those interconnections go. Whether it's our health or the health of other species or the ecosystems, we're all closely tied to each other. And the thing is, we've gone about destroying nature and thinking about ourselves as separate from the natural world. And that's in many ways led us to where we are right now in this moment. And in this case, it's a pandemic, but we've actually been living with this for much longer. It's been at least over 2 decades. And we've seen already how urgent the crisis of climate change is, what it's done, habitat destruction, and at another level also just the exploitation of human beings and the people most vulnerable and who are living at the margins of society. And the reason actually we wanted to bring that into the conversation today is, it's all connected, and that's the thing, right? So when you're thinking about the natural world, you're also thinking about the person who comes to collect your garbage. You're thinking about your domestic worker, your sanitation worker. It's all part of the same picture. And that's why we wanted to actually have this webinar and I think to bring that essence back to why we're doing this, because it's not some newfangled idea of green consumerism and encouraging people to do that, but to say that as communities, as individuals, as governments, we have to live and be present in this world in a particular way that respects all forms of life. And the idea today is to sort of begin that conversation, say, how do we live it? And what does it mean when we're saying living that? So without any more chatter from me, I wanted to introduce the first speaker of the day today, who is very, very close to us and one of our partners, and we're very excited to have her. It's Poonam Bir Kasturi, who's the founder of Daily Dump. Now, Poonam wears many hats, and the favorite of which is what she calls her witch hat. And she often pulls new, interesting things out of that to challenge her team. So she's trained as an industrial designer, has worked as a design educator, and now fondly is known as Compostwali. She talks to trees, bacteria, clouds, and she keeps everyone on their toes. And she bows to no one except the black soldier fly maggot. So Poonam's here with us today to talk about the scale of waste as a problem, how we can do things differently, and what difference one person's shift makes. So Poonam, I'll hand over to you and mute myself now.
Thank you very much, Deepika and Srinidhi and Arpita. So it's my pleasure to be here because I feel these 3 young women are trying to do something that is, they believe that they're doing something that is important. And I think that intentionality, and we're talking about intentional living, I think that is what actually drives people's passions and keeps them going and gives them that stamina and that commitment to say, I want to do this because I think it's meaningful. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to do it. And I'm going to do with less. I was asking them, I said, how are you making money? And they all kind of, all the fresh NGOs always hum and haw and they get embarrassed. And we know that journey, right? Everybody who has tried to do something new, something different, faces that initial bump. But it's the intention behind it. And I really respect their enthusiasm and their expertise that they bring to the table. So I wish all of you guys all the very best. So I've been asked to, I'm not very good at actually speaking about any one topic, but I'll try. So I was looking at this idea of what does intentional living mean, and I think I'll just share something from a very personal perspective. In the work that we've done in the past 14 years and the work that I did before that in education and trying to make sense of what was happening around us. Deepika mentioned this thing about, this pandemic that has brought all the fissures open. We're seeing everything come, it was there in the background and suddenly now we're forced to admit that it's been there all along. How does that connect to intentional living? And I think that's one of the questions that I think relates to what we define as work. Because a very interesting thing is work is linked to wage. Wage is linked to living standards. In our kind of societies where we have become urbanized and we are saying that our wealth or our, what we can eat comes from what we do, it's directly linked to how we define work and what is the value the society we give to that work. And when I was growing up, my dad used to explain to me that all work is good work. There is nothing called dirty work. There's nothing called undignified work. But while I was growing up, I also saw that nobody else believed that. That my friends in school wanted a better job. And a better job meant directly more money. It meant a bigger house. It meant cars. It meant, so the car itself was not maybe something that you wanted, but having a car got people looking at you in a certain way. And I tend to agree with this philosopher, this Alan Bottom. He says, maybe we're not really materialistic, but we want those things because of what we believe people will behave with us as. So if I have a car, you look at me different. So you love me more. So he believes that it is how much people love you based on what you do, on what you possess. And I felt that understanding, actually, I wanted to put into my intention of saying, okay, so what is the work that I'll choose to do that I will actually try and see whether I can make the wage better in that work. I can get people to understand that that work is also meaningful, whereas it may not be, when I start with, it may not be in that paradigm of useful. And how do I get them out of this mindset that this is the only way you can construct meaning, work, wage, and livelihood? So that was my intention when I started Daily Dump. And while it was a very intuitive kind of understanding, which was informed by those many years of working in industry, working in education, I feel this particular image that I've chosen of the egg within the egg, right? When you break open an egg, it's not necessarily that it has nothing inside and you have to cook it from scratch. Maybe there's another egg, a full idea sitting there. So I'd like to just go back and summarize. I think that we often forget that what we own and what we acquire and consume, we often do it from our intention that we want to belong. We want somebody to accept us. We want somebody to love us, because they should feel that we are valuable because we have these things and we do these things. So how do we get that to become a little afresh? And I feel there is a lot of hope in India because of all the young people. The older people don't understand this. The young people are trying to redefine what it means to work. Yeah, how can I look at this differently? And I think that intention should also be informed by this idea that actually, see, when you try and create a fresh perspective of your own work, be very mindful and be very honest that you're not doing it for wanting somebody to love you, but you want it because you believe that it will make a better wage for somebody, that it will make a better workspace for somebody. So my intention in Daily Dump is that even the people who are illiterate, not had the opportunity, they're illiterate not because they want to be. They did not have the opportunity when they were growing up to go to school. Even they should get a very, very good wage that they cannot get anywhere else. Because once they have the wage, they open up the opportunity. And when they open up the opportunity, you will not control what they do with it or what they can do with it. And that is very important, to open up as many opportunities with, and that we've not done in India, right? And the pandemic has shown systemically we didn't do that. And like Vandana has got the UrbanMali thing. She's also trying to do the same thing. She's saying a gardener before in my grandmother's time would only be a Mali who's illiterate, who doesn't know anything, and you won't treat them as a professional. But we're saying no, all this knowledge has got expertise. They're as important in this urban living space of urban well-being, and we need to give them decent wage, and we need to acknowledge them, and we cannot be snobs about it. All work is good work. So I think that this kind of understanding that you need to increase the wage, the living wage. It's not, I hate the word minimum wage. I mean, how can I decide that somebody needs only $1 to live? I just don't get it. And we all kind of put it in our reports, and it's all written down in some policy document. I mean, what nonsense. It's ridiculous. Yeah. So I remember, and I asked myself, can I live on 15,000 rupees a month? Can you? I won't be able to. And I have the balls to say that somebody else should live on 15,000 rupees a month. It just doesn't make sense. At that point, it breaks down in my head. So I feel that whatever the intentional, if children understand this, I feel that they will try and do something about it. But it's never put to them like this, that you want a wage, you want work. You want it usually for what? Why do you want it? Ask yourself. You want to belong actually, or you want to feel powerful. So unravel that. So it's like that egg. You open it up. We don't give children opportunities to do that. We don't give adults opportunities to do that. Seriously, why do you want that 1 lakh rupees every month? When do you decide you want 1 lakh and not 50? And when do you decide when you want 30 and not 50? And what I don't understand is we've got a society where the CEO gets the most amount of money, which is okay, but how much more? And this is not about socialist something, yeah? So I feel so that's my broad thoughts on this. And I think that you get to that space when you have, but you get to this understanding of questioning why you want a wage, what you want to do with work, what is your intention on that. You have to do some prior work, and that prior work is you have to develop fresh eyes. I'll go to the next slide. In my mind, I say you'd have to develop fresh eyes. You have to develop a very fresh mind. Next. You have to develop a very fresh heart. And next. And then you get the fruits. I've used all work from different artists who I've really admired. I love looking at art, especially for children's books. And a lot of these are coming from children's books. And I feel that that is the practice. If you want to, you have to decide, or my personal journey has been, my intention was to relook at this nature of what work does for man. And that was my intention. And I had to work backwards and say, unless I had the ability to be honest and have fresh eyes and not have my biases, unless I had the honesty to, and it's a journey. There's no one destination. You can't say, okay, now I've arrived. It's still a journey. There's lots more to do for myself. But I really feel that for me, this is what intentional living is. I have to have an intention of what I do every day and how my every day pans out to what I've understood of the big picture. So that's all I'd like to share. Thank you.
Poonam, thank you for that. I think, again, I mean, when we'd written to you, we said, can you speak about waste and the scale of waste? But I like that you didn't do that, and you've talked about what this is really about in terms of dignity and justice in many ways, and dignity and justice for all, just across the board without measurement, depending on where you're born or what happens to you. So thank you for setting that context. I think it was it's powerful to remember that that's why we're also having this conversation. I want to welcome next Shruti Sunderraman, who, as one of our co-founders, Srinidhi, has been engaging with online, on Instagram, but for the first time we have in person. So it's lovely to see you and have you here on the flesh, Shruti.
Thank you.
So Shruti is a freelance writer and the executive editor of the Current Conservation magazine. She lives in her garden with her cat and is a strong believer in the personal being political in conversations about the environment, policy, and zero-waste living. So Shruti, I'm going to mute myself now and hand it over to you.
I hope everyone can see this, yeah? Okay, cool. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me. So one of the things that I don't really remember a point in time when I decided that I'm gonna start a low waste thing and do that whole thing. I'm sorry, but sudden revelations is a very white people concept. I don't have those. Everything usually comes one after the other. Change takes time. Taking time to take stock of the kind of life you want to lead also takes time. So it's not like something that I decided one day and decided to do, I'm gonna start trying to go zero waste. I am an incredibly imperfect zero waster, but I'm gonna talk about a little bit in the future slides. But essentially I work with Current Conservation magazine. It's based in Bangalore here, and we discuss everything from climate change to ecology to what conservation really means in the magazine, and I will leave a link to it later at the end of the presentation. So apart from that, I have a cat and I live with a cat, and my cat helps me garden, and I am obsessed with plants, and his name is Kibu. This is the mom I am now. I have completely accepted it. And this is like a tiny little garden that I have made up in my terrace, and I grow everything from vegetables to herbs to I don't know, edible flowers. I'm a tea maniac, so I just pick flowers from my garden and have tea. And these are some of the vegetables that I've been. So I just had a fresh batch of spinach and made that into a salad. It was super fun. I didn't really think that I am going to start having a vegetable garden on my own. Of course, that was a pipe dream, but essentially I wanted to just start not having to first not go into the market to buy stuff that's just wrapped in plastic. And the first thing that I thought is I can just buy whatever vegetables are immediately available from farmers who sell at Hopcoms, or on Tuesdays they just directly come to Frasertown and I buy from there. But that also started shifting to why don't I grow my own vegetables and lessen dependency as much as possible. So it came from there. And I also make my own fertilizer. I don't use any pesticide, XYZ. I just made a fresh batch that I could use yesterday, and I could leave a recipe for that also at home. And I take DIY to like the next level. Mostly I just like to find out different ways in which I can improve something that I'm already doing. And that's really like, when we talk about intentional living, I think it's to me it's less about just having the goal to do something, but as much as about being in the present moment and trying to be meditative about all the processes that I'm trying to bring into an outcome. And essentially I've always believed that when we talk about change and improving life around us, and it sounds like an idealistic unreachable idealistic concept, but I've always believed that it's as local as possible, as immediately in your environment as possible. So and that applies on multiple levels for me, which I'll talk about here. So this is just the magazine. I put it to introduce myself a little bit. And So I mentioned that even to Curio-city when we decided to work on a collaboration, that I totally believe that the personal is political. There's no such thing as apolitical. If someone believes you are apolitical, then that is also a political stance because you're choosing not to listen. So, and when I need to clarify what I mean by political. I don't just mean the mess that comes with outside politics, but every decision that we take in our lives is a decision is a political act because it is an action that is bound to impact something around you. So that's what I mean by everything and personal is political. In that way, one of some of the things that I've been doing that I think was super helpful is somewhere around 5 months ago, I think I entirely stopped buying cleaning supplies from the market. No Harpic, no phenyl, no laundry detergent, everything that like so many cleaning supplies that just come wrapped in plastic, and I just entirely stopped all of them. So I started YouTube Zindabad. I just started looking at so many YouTube videos about how we can sort of look at going low waste or zero waste about this. And came across soap nuts. And I know that even Daily Dump has, supplies soap nuts and encourages people to use soap nuts in their laundry baskets. So soap nuts is like the base of every cleaning product that I've ever made. I make it for toilet cleaners, floor cleaners, hand wash, face wash, laundry detergent. If I ever have a dishwasher, it will be for a dishwasher detergent. You name it, and I have used Rita or soap nuts for that. I think Curio-city will share a link of the recipe Google sheet that I made for it. But it's so simple. All I do is dedicate 2 hours in a month to make a whole batch of soap nut water and then supplement it into different ways. And I have supplies ready for another 2 months. So, and it costed me less mental and physical effort than it would take to decide, is this a better alternative? Is this less toxic? Is that less toxic? Is this more plastic? Is this more expensive? No, I saved so much mental energy on all those decisions that were just completely unnecessary. And this is so simple to make. Now my niece, who's 16 years old, she's making it in her hostel, and it's just so much fun. The thing is that when I shared this kind of just blew up, and suddenly people are like, oh, I did not know that there is just so much plastic consumption that I could save on. So it was fun to see people really trying on all of these things. These are just essentially, I have cleaning supplies at home that I ferment and keep. This has been the Harpic bottle that I bought some 7 months ago, and I have not thrown it away, and I just keep refilling it with the soap nut solution that I made for bathroom cleaning. And I make my own toothpaste at home with nothing but coconut oil, baking soda, peppermint, and eucalyptus oil. That's it, and you are done. I don't dread going to the dentist for cleanups anymore, so it's a lot of fun. And again, Daily Dump saved my life. I was just telling Poonam before the call that composting has really, really changed my outlook towards waste in general. I don't think until we have the waste in front of us on a daily basis, every day in our homes, we don't realize just how much we're throwing out. Like every single time I have like a whole bottle or a basket of waste to put out, and I'm like, do I really eat this much? Do I really cook this much? And then you become actually more conscious about how much you're consuming on a daily basis. I'm not talking about nutrition or eating or whatever, but just the idea of consumption. Because, when we throw the wet waste out, it becomes someone else's problem temporarily. It eventually comes back to us in more ways than we can comprehend. But when we start putting the waste right in front of us, or in our backyards, or in our balconies, or in a corner in our house, we're like, oh my God, I put out so much waste. So composting has changed everything for me. I haven't put wet waste out in some 6 months, I think 6-7 months. So that's that. And this is my current waste output, like dry waste output. This is 1 bag for 2 weeks. From having 1 bag per day, this is now 1 bag for 2 weeks. And it's really, really possible because, well, I did it. It was fun. And it's really satisfying. And you just not only save on energy, but also money. So it's nice. Other than that, these are some gardening initiatives. I don't throw away Amazon bags. I stopped buying from Jeff Bezos. I don't want to put any money into him anymore. But whatever I do already have, I just turn it into planters, all plastic into planters. Now, I want to talk about something that's super important to me and to all of us, is that political is also personal. Nothing that is out there is, like I said, it's not outside of us. And I think the more local we think, the more we are aware of how climate change works. It's super important to personalize the narrative that lies outside. So, you know how we talked about, you know what's coming here. We are fighting over all these things, but guess who's waiting for us? So I really relate to this comic made by Upmani Bhattacharya, because I was like, I really feel this, because we're all fighting over 15,000 things, whereas we are putting money into coal making initiatives, fossil fuels, while it's all crazy to us. And no, the thing that has been going on around coronavirus is that nature is healing. Nature is not healing. Absence of human life will not completely reverse everything that has been going on. There is no reversal anymore. There is only consciousness of consumption. The reversal process has just stopped like 15 years ago. So that's one thing to keep in mind. When climate change, how climate change individually, personally impacts us is, you saw locusts coming in Bihar and even in Rajasthan, and suddenly everyone's like, oh, it's biblical. No, it's not biblical. It's climate change. It's just happening as we sit in our homes. So, and that's why I'm saying, you know, when we talk about it and we listen to Greta Thunberg, we think, oh, you know, this is a global concept. But it's, we are a part of the global. So every little thing affects our individual environment as well. The nativity of plants changes and everything just, you know, it becomes a problem. This is how the locust problem started, because the temperature started heating up, and there were cyclones after cyclones in the South Pacific and the Horn of Africa, and because of that, locusts started breeding from 2018, and now they've become a swarm. So what they do is they essentially destroy all agricultural crops in their way. So it has led to so much damage to marginalized communities like farmers, and it can lead to food scarcity. That's when it'll hit our stomachs and we'll be like, oh, you know, this is easy. Nothing happens to us. So there are so many reports. And we, essentially, when I say the political is personal, I think the more we take a look at what's happening around us in our immediate geographies, it's easier to understand the scale of how climate change impacts all of us. And why do I keep talking about climate change when we're talking about intentional living? Because I can't sit in my house in the comfort of my home and think that I'm safe, because I'm not. I'm not trying to be alarmist here, and I don't believe climate change conversations should be alarmist at all. I'm just saying that the little I do, or little we all do, to improve our awareness and use our voices to amplify issues around us, it just makes it easier for all of us to live a little more peacefully. And we all know what happened to the Sundarbans. And one thing that comes out from understanding the disaster at Sundarbans, when so much of biodiversity and people who live there being displaced is lost, we always say that, you know, even in conservation people talk about, but the people are not important. The tigers are important, the marshes are important, but it is the people who live around in those areas who are the guardians of those areas, and they understand how to coexist with sensitive ecosystems. And we sit here and we have a very black and white narrative of this. So I think it's important to shift that narrative to understand from human wildlife conflict, it goes to human wildlife interaction. Even around the place where we live in right now, if we just look at the kind of birds that are around, to be conscious about having pets in your home, yes, that's a conversation to be had. I have a cat, yes, but too much domestication could also affect the balance of the environment around us. So I think there are so many stories out there. All you need to do is do simple Google search or shameless plug, look at current conservation. But you just need to think about that. And more importantly, let's be very conscious about fossil fuel consumption. And a very important issue that no one talks about on an individual level is, let's not forget this guy. Gautam Adani is taking over the world one coal mine at a time, and millionaires are just giving more money to this guy. Governments are giving more money to this guy to dig up more coal. Coal is one of the greatest carbon heaters in the world, and he seems to believe that without coal, people will lose livelihood. But here's the reality of renewable sources: is it actually generates more jobs and creates long-term savings. There are so many articles on that. Like, please privately message me. I'm happy to send out an email blast on all of these things. So there are so many organizations that have started Stop Adani movements, and people raise their voice to not have Adani take over their local environments and not have the group of companies buy more land around them. So this is the logic of Adani, is that they think they can fight climate change by making more climate change. So it's interesting. This is just very simple. I think we're very, very out of time. Is conserve water around you. One bucket bath challenge is super important. And look at local protests around you. And for example, the Stop Pulicat and Save, the Save Pulicat protest. It's called Stop Adani Save Pulicat. That's one of the oldest things, like 4 years old. The protest has been going on for a while. There are lots of local environmental groups that advocate for these rights, that all you could do is just send one email to your local MLA or your local MP, or share on your social media profile so that people are more aware that these things are happening. And as much as possible, think as local as possible. Look at people around you. The RA Forest Initiative, Saving RA Forest Initiative is one fantastic example. The Kodaikanal initiative is another example, like just as local as possible. And the last and very important thing to intentionally live is do your individual efforts, yes, but also remember that a collective is made up of many, many individuals. So we need to stop Adani. That's kind of what I was trying to get at. And thank you for listening to me. I'm going to stop the sharing now. How do I stop it? Okay. Thank you.
That was wonderful, Shruti.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, really eye-opening.
And I need a subscription to your magazine. I love it.
Yay. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. I will send you a link.
Yes, please.
Well, I think, Shruti, what you did beautifully in terms of showing all the things that you're doing day on day. I think a lot of people say, oh, it's too much, it's too difficult, why should I bother to take time? And I think breaking that down with recipes, with actual like hands-on, this is how you live it, was really powerful for me.
I want to also say that Harpic bottle, I did the same thing. I put my soap nut solution inside, because that Harpic bottle is really good for one thing. The nozzle, that bend, helps you put it in the pot.
It's designed well.
That's correct. Yeah. And it's just so easy to keep using it forever.
Yeah. I think we should sell Harpic just to make the bottles.
Or actually just stop. There are so many of them on the shelves. Correct. Even if the entire world buys up their entire stock, there will still be a lot of them left.
I agree.
So, yeah.
So, Shruti, I'm sure you're going to get a lot of questions about the hows and how you actually put this stuff together. But I think also what was powerful was the point you made about going beyond the immediate. Yes, you can influence, but to see what's happening in your community and what is going on around you politically, because we need to start claiming that stake with our governments, with our MLAs, with the people who we've elected in power now. So I'm just going to now move to Dr. Vandana Krishnamurthy, who actually I heard is the founder of UrbanMali Network, but I heard about UrbanMali first from my mother, who's a huge fan, and she has some over 100 pots in her balcony, and I get photos every day, and it's lovely. So Vandana started UrbanMali with the hope of connecting people to plants in the city through home gardens. She works with farmers, horticulturists, and passionate nature lovers to spread native plants in cities. And we'd asked her today to talk about the people-plant connection and what that looks like before COVID-19 and what it looks like after. So I'm going to mute myself now. And
Thanks so much, Deepika. Can I also share my screen? Is that possible to? Yeah.
I think you should be able to. Sorry, I was talking to mute it.
Right.
There you go.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I run UrbanMali Network. We started about almost 6 years ago, where our main intention was to connect people to plants. I mean, you have a lot of gardening companies who are there working with gardens, setting up vegetable gardens and flowering gardens and things like that. But I get at the essence of it all is really how much people are interacting with plants and how much they're actually understanding what not just about that one single plant that's there in your balcony, but how on a larger scale it relates to nature, and our sort of connection with nature really matters. So therefore we started UrbanMali mainly to kind of not just from the customer's perspective or the person who wants a garden, but we were also very interested in being able to provide livelihoods for farmers. So on a daily basis, we have so many farmers who are migrating to the cities every single day and looking for jobs, having major losses in their farms, that they come looking in the city to be able to pay back the heavy debts that they have taken on, and they come with a lot of baggage, not just financially but emotionally and all of this. But while a lot of them get into jobs like, say, typically construction, labor, and just doing a lot of manpower related work, these are people who are born and brought up in the farm setting. They're the ones who know exactly about how soil works, and how soil is such an important living matter, and as well as how plants function. And their understanding of it is very, very different from our knowledge of say a textbook oriented approach. So they treat plants like it's their baby. When they touch a plant, the way they handle it, the way they place it, the way they put it into the soil, it's really an experience to just watch them, because it's really very, very delicate, very sensitive, because they sort of relate to the plant as something that is their equal, or maybe even greater, because it is a life giving, food giving. So once we started looking for one gardener or one farmer, we realized that there were so many people who are out there who are so knowledgeable and who are really looking to be able to get a job, or be able to just support their families, be able to just have their children's education taken care of back in the village. So we got in touch with a lot of people, and now we have close to 42 farmers who are working along with us and making a difference every single day to gardens all across Bangalore. And so we work with smaller gardens, we work with larger gardens, we just do purely maintenance, we also do setup. Even Mr. Niranjan Khatri's house, one of our gardens, the gardener who is in the center, Basha, I'm sure he's looking at him and saying, hey, I recognize him, right? So Basha goes to Mr. Khatri, Anupama Khatri's house as well, once in a month. So for us, it wasn't really only having the people plant connect. It was about biodiversity. It was about providing livelihoods to farmers. It was about creating spaces that are extremely non-toxic and non-chemical and purely organic, and also just the environment that it creates for people. So there is a disorder. Okay, so getting down to this people and plant connect and how we really understand it. Uh, People in the US especially have come up with this term, a nature deficit disorder, which means that the lesser interaction that you have with the natural environment, it leads to so many different character, behavioral and physical problems for people, not just children, but also adults. And more we are tending towards an environment where we're only looking at four walls, and we're only looking at so much concrete and structures around us. So the idea of having nature within these spaces is something that is extremely relevant. So we are all biophilic, which means all humans are biophilic. We have a natural attraction towards nature. You put a child out into a garden, you put a child out into a forest, you'll see the first reaction is that they run. They are free. They are so relaxed in their mind. And it's just not about children. It's about us humans as well. Sometimes you really have to kind of understand what is that exact emotion that you have when you go out into your garden or when you go out into a forest. It's very different. There is maybe it won't be like, whoa, you suddenly turned into this happy person. No, but on a very subtle level, it's making a huge difference. Just the color green is known to really have a huge impact on us. And this disconnection of nature that we are having, because we are living in more concretized environments, is for us in the long run a huge problem. Okay, when you look at this image on the right, a person sitting with their tab or their phone out in a beautiful setting, that really creates such a drastic difference of what we've become now. We are so addicted to our phones, and we are so addicted to our computers that we're not able to spend those few minutes really accepting how important nature is for us. And it affects us in many negative ways. Okay, one is just the calmness or the peacefulness that nature or being in a green environment gives you is something that we can't appreciate, or we can't take, we cannot even acknowledge sometimes. And that's a huge problem. This natural sense of biophilia that we're talking about, we're literally sort of putting it aside, we're pushing it away, saying that no, I don't need it, I'd rather be with my electronic equipments. And we're really heading towards disaster if that's the kind of approach that we really want to. And this is actually a termed disorder. Okay, there's a book that came out called Last Child in the Woods, and I don't know, maybe some of you have read it. If not, you should read it. It was written by Robert Louvre, and he in the book mentions this disorder because the whole book talks about a nature connection for children, and how these days children are so disconnected from it that they are having so many different sort of challenges just in terms of personality, in terms of physical being, which is a problem. And it also encourages a lot for children to be outside playing. If you ask a child, I mean, not every child, but if you ask some children what they'd like to do in their free time, they might say, put the TV on and let me play a game, or I'd like to watch a movie, or I'd like to play a video game. You're not hearing very many children say, I want to go out and play, I want to go climb a tree, because we're gradually shifting towards a sort of behavior mechanism that is so sort of interior centric and electronic centric, and we're literally creating such a huge shift between nature and us, which is really destructive in the long term. And primarily parents are doing this. Okay, so the broader perspective we have for our children is really important for their understanding of what nature is. And we have no right to say, oh, people are destroying nature, or oh, look at how this child is breaking the plant. It's something that is really created by the people around this child. So children spend more time viewing television and playing video games than actually being physically outside. I have I have 4 nieces, and I don't have children, so but I have nieces who I love to engage with. And when I take them outside, it's such a world of difference for them. Climbing a tree, smelling a flower, or just lying down on the grass is something that is like, wow. I mean, for us, like you and me, play meant running outdoors. It meant climbing trees. It meant taking 5 different stones, putting it on one on top of the other, and then, or creating a jigsaw puzzle with odd shaped pebbles or stones. That was what play was for us, right? And we didn't have sophisticated toys. We didn't have all these funny cups that you have, in one big cup and then a smaller cup and a smaller cup. I really think that if we gave them 7 different size stones, that would be a more interactive thing for children than actually these very plastic and very artificial ways of connecting with nature. But like I said, the lack of nature really impacts children. Okay, so when you interact with nature, when you connect with nature, when you're out, in the outdoors, which is considered your play space, it increases creativity for a child, because then they look at this whole landscape, or this whole environment around them, and they think about all the different shapes and structures, the colors, the forms, the textures, and that helps them improve in creativity. It's not about that white wall or that drawer that you open. It's nature is so varied and so amazing in that sense. It helps them in problem solving. It's not A plus B equals C kind of a thing. It's very different. So you need to explore, you need to dig, you need to place things one above these others. So that helps in problem solving capability. They're always positive. I'm sure you've seen children who are out in nature. They have smiles on their faces, so always positive. 1 out of 4 children is now obese because they're just sitting on a couch or on a chair playing a video game, or working with the computer. Being outdoors also helps in physical well-being, and also increase social connections. A child who is disconnected from nature, who is interacting more with electrical gadgets, doesn't want to interact with another human being at all, doesn't want to sit and have a conversation, wants to be away with their phone, not wanting to have any kind of conversation, which in the long run is a huge problem. And it really is a situation like this, where we have to introduce nature to our children. I mean, how weird is that? We have to say, hey, look, that's a tree, did you know you can climb it? But and they see nature only through the electric, or the electronic media. And like I was saying, largely it is the kind of situation that we build for our children. And because we live in cities, access to nature is a lot less, but there is so much that you can do even in your little balcony space. Getting them to interact with nature, getting them to stay away from electronic media is something that is really what we can do. So in this entire lockdown period, we have been extremely busy, not on the ground, like our gardeners have been at home, because we've not been able to physically go out and do work. But as such, Urban Mali has been talking about nature and talking about vegetable gardening and things like that, interacting with a lot of people. And these are few of the things that people have been doing, and it's really heartwarming to know that um, uh, it has given time to look at their own garden spaces. It has given time to observe what is happening there. So a lot of people are getting into vegetable gardening. A lot of children are being engaged to get into gardening, or be engaged in the garden spaces that people have. People are getting creative and doing stuff like this, making jewelry out of nature, and it's pretty nice looking, right? I know a lot of people who make jewelry with seeds and dried leaves and things like that. People are people, because we don't have access to a garden center to be able to go buy plants and seeds and stuff, a lot of people are now trying to take cuttings from the existing plants and then multiplying. So house plants can be easily grown, can easily produce shoots in water. They're also doing a lot of transplanting. They're also consuming what they have grown. They're using stuff out of their kitchens, like for instance dhania, chilies, methi, that can be easily grown, and you can consume the fruits and the leaves that it has. Microgreens, that's one thing that has become the cool new superfood at the moment, but it is very, very nutritious, and again, something that you can grow on your own without even needing any sort of media, without even going to a shop and buying seeds, because you can grow microgreens from mustard, you can grow microgreens from jeera, chia, flax, methi, of course, and they're extremely delicious and known to have 40% more nutritional value than actually an adult plant. The picture on the right is a you remember we all did this experiment in school of growing mustard seeds on cotton or on a tissue paper and stuff. And the whole idea about growing mustard is that it produces shoots so quickly, and you can actually see the shoot of the plant and the root of the plant. And then there was this understanding of what is a shoot, what is a root. Since it was so quick growing, these are things that people have been doing to get their children to understand botany and just understand plants and how they grow in. And of course, then you can go ahead and use these shoots as part of your salad also as microgreens. So this is what people have been doing. That's on a sort of at a garden level, because you're at home, you're experiencing nature in your home, you're getting more conscious about what you have, and then thinking about how you can expand it, how you can improve your natural surroundings, what else can you do, how can you be creative. And it's lovely that we've been given that forced time to look at what we have in our space as nature. On a larger scale, see, the joke was that I think towards the end of the serious lockdown, the pollution control department said that finally we have reached air pollution levels that are satisfactory. So I mean, so air quality levels have actually improved. we've I'm sure all of us have seen pictures of birds coming out in forest areas and peacocks in Malleshwaram, and a time for people to actually for nature to come out and experience the spaces. So biodiversity has improved. I hear a lot more bird sounds around me these days than I did much before the lockdown. It's also been documented that there has been some decrease in the carbon dioxide level, but really it's hard to say what is going to happen after this COVID episode. It's challenging in the sense that I know for a fact that there is an acknowledgement on that interrelatedness of life on earth, and how this entire corona episode has interacted with nature and how nature has benefited in some sense. I know, like Shruti was saying, it's not like everything's gone back to normal. It's probably never going to happen that way, but I feel like there is an acknowledgement about that, but I'm really unsure on how it's going to really affect the way people consider nature or consider the environment, and it's important. But for sure, it has been a warning of some sorts. I think that's the first step. But we didn't need such a big pandemic to give us a sort of jolt about it. We should have been thinking about this much before. But yeah, I mean, hopefully what has happened is at least that connection has been brought about. That connection has been brought about for people and nature, and at least that the relationship that they have is going to impact the way they connect with nature in the future. That's from me. Thank you.
Wonderful, Vandana.
That was so lovely.
Yeah.
I'm particularly happy that you address the relationship that kids these days
Right.
can develop with the natural world, because that's something that I really struggle with. My nieces, tiny,
Yeah.
they're like, I want a PlayStation, and then they came here like before all this started, and then they destroyed a couple of plants, but I'm happy they got their hands dirty. That was fun.
I guess then, there is a perspective of also being a mentor. In that sense, you really have to be creative and come up with games that would make them want to be engaged. One of the things that helped me is that we had this game where you would call yourself a fruit or a plant or something. Like, say your name is Deepika, you had to add another word before that, which was a plant or a fruit. So you would be like dragon fruit Deepika. So children had to then think about the fruits that they eat or the plants that they have at home. Sometimes you don't have a fruit with a particular alphabet, like V. I don't know any fruit with V, but then I know an orchid. So I guess there are these introductory games, and there's a way in which children of this generation have to be led along a path to then get them connected to nature. It's challenging.
Yeah, but it's sort of like a lesson to myself also, about, because it's very problem solving, right? This is a problem that I face on a general level as a journalist. Is there are these, whenever, say for example, in my presentation I'm talking about something political, it's already exclusionary as a concept in a lot of people's
Right.
heads. So how do I personalize it, and how can I get people to interact with it in an engaging manner? And that's something that I learned when I engage with kids also, because it's a
Yeah.
challenge, and the more I can simplify it for them and the more engaging it can become, the better to consume the idea. So yeah, I'm really happy you addressed that. That was really, really nice.
Yes, thank you, Vandana. I mean, and I forgot about the mustard experiment, and I want to go
Yeah.
do it because suddenly, like, that was so much fun. But I think also,
And this one thing, what applies to children applies to us adults, and we feel equally enthusiastic about it. So
yes, my mom gave me a cutting of the moss rose when I left Bangalore a few months ago, and I've been just getting so much pleasure seeing it grow and like seeing it flower, and there's immense wonder and awe to be found there. So thank you for speaking to that. But I wanted to circle back for a minute. We're not going to let Compostwali get away without speaking to again waste and what is our immediate connection to it, because you've all spoken very individually about how we connect to all of these things that we're talking about in terms of action, and how we connect up to the larger structures and systems of which we're all a part. So Poonam, I just want to like come back to you for a minute, just to, if you could just speak to what is it we're grappling with when we're talking about waste, and how does it make a difference? It's a question that gets asked over and over again, but I'm asking again this time.
I don't know how other people think of waste, but I think waste is not the problem. Waste is a symptom. Waste has never been a problem. So very often I think we are not trained, especially I think in India. Vandana was talking about children, right? We did a 3-month program under the Hebbal flyover about 2 years ago. We took students from 5 different schools of different economic backgrounds, and we brought the same kids, that was the age group between 8 to 12, under the flyover, and we discussed just this: what is your relationship with nature? And children are very smart, right? What they asked us? They said, you are telling us we must have a relationship. My ISC board and my IGSC board is asking me to get good marks in maths. My parents want me to go to Harvard. Okay, what is this all about? So I had to establish to them that, I said, see, you have to get into Harvard. Okay, we're not going to be able to change that system very fast, right? But if the adults are saying that that is important, what we are trying to say is this is also important, because this ignites a different part of your intelligence. And then we showed them examples of all over the world that the current research, the current cutting edge research is happening between data, bio, And it's all biological. They are looking at leaves of palaks as systems for doing generation of heart disease. To repair hearts, they're looking at the plumbing of a leaf of a palak, right? Now, if we are training Indian kids not to look at nature at all, and which we are telling them in some subversive way, we are saying that that's not important. And kids are getting that message. But what we're not telling them is actually out there in the world, the best labs are all about data and biology. That's where all the current research is happening. In Korea, they're trying to regenerate the mammoth, right? There is so much science that is looking at biology for inspiration. Now, so I feel that when you look at waste, right, I think waste is a symptom of a understanding of how you produce something, how you make sense and meaning for societies, how you consume, and how you live, how society has to live. Okay, so like when she says about Adani, if we are all under the impression that coal is the only way to produce energy, then there's no way we're going to fight it. And we don't tell our kids that, right? I don't find any 12-year-old or a 10-year-old have any understanding of what coal does to them, right? So if we're not preparing, so this is what I'm saying. So waste will happen is the end. What are we doing for preparing ourselves to understand what waste is? We're doing nothing in the pipeline for preparation. We're not even preparing ourselves to try and understand this system better. And I think that's fundamentally why we have waste. So that when people ask daily time, why are you not looking at plastics? Why are you not recycling plastic? Why are you not picking up all the plastic on the road? I'm saying, boss, I'm not Hindustan Levers to clean up man. I don't want to be. I'm not interested. But my problem is somebody has to do that work also. You produce all the plastic, right? Somebody has to recycle it. But the point is, systemically, how can we go back? How can a lot of us, all of us work? Like Vandana is saying, I want to look at livelihoods. But why? She doesn't need to, right? But she chose to. That's her intention because she saw the connection. So how can we get more and more people to understand that waste is not the problem? It's a symptom. And there's a huge other thing that we must put our focus on. I think that's why Daily Dump talks in the way it does. That's why Daily Dump sits and invests in education for kids. But it doesn't make us any money. In fact, if I had a big investor sitting on my board, they won't allow us to do what we're doing. They'll say, you should be actually going out there. It should be bothering you that you're not selling 50,000 more composters. That's what they'll tell us. We're saying, no, for us, it's more important to be able to tell the story. It's more important for us if one person comes and we can have the conversation, we can see the connection with the larger system. And if we can see the connection with the larger system, they'll go out there, they will talk about it, they will think about it. And like Sneha says, Shruti says, it's completely political. It is political. I don't have the strength or the courage of a deep activist like, say, Vandana Shiva. I don't even have the personality. I don't have the expertise. I don't have the knowledge. I'm not trained as she is, right? So I can only do what I can do. I have my own limitations. But for me, this is what I can do. And for me, this is political. For me, it's important to tell people that waste is not a problem. It's a symptom. And I think it's very important for all us to go back and say, how are we preparing our own children and their children's children to make this whole, India is such an old civilization. We don't have to go the way the West is going. We have to find our own answers. And unless we empower lots of young kids, and all of you are very young, I must be the oldest person on this panel. I'm very glad to see all you young people. You guys are going to change this place. So more power to all of you.